Okay, so a pleasant good morning to everyone. So how's everyone? Okay naman, sige. So, Happy New Year. Ito lang, medyo baliktad lang. Wait, I will have to move my background. Wait, para baliktad yung aking ano. Anyway, sige, and then I will just share my slides. Wait lang, ha? Wait. Okay, wait. Okay, share my slide. Oh, wait. This one. Okay, so can you see my slides?
Yes po, Doc.
Okay, sige. So we will discuss today the management of trauma-related disorders. So you were able to review last year the different trauma-related disorders. So for this year, as third year, we're going to discuss how to manage, no? Okay, so to the next slide. So these are the objectives. So we will try to enumerate the different trauma-related disorders again, and then discuss the epidemiology and etiology of trauma-related disorders, and illustrate the clinical features of trauma-related disorders in the DSM-5, no? And discuss the pharmacologic and psychotherapeutic management of trauma-related disorders. Okay, so if you look at post-traumatic stress disorder, which of course you can differentiate from acute stress disorder in terms of the time, no, of the timing of the signs and symptoms. So if it is less than a month, it's usually acute, no, stress disorder, and if it is more than a month, then it is post-traumatic stress disorder. So the lifetime prevalence or incidence of PTSD is 9 to 15%, no, and 30% may develop full-blown PTSD, 22% with partial symptoms, no? And in the other areas, no, like Iraq, Afghanistan, no, 13% develop PTSD, and the lifetime prevalence is 8% with additional 5 to 15% with subclinical symptoms, no? And usually there are more in women compared to men, no? And we know that PTSD can appear at any age. Even with toddlers, they can also be traumatized, no? And comparing women and men, usually men's trauma are usually related to combat experiences or the military. And usually a lot of the reports, no, among women are these are related to assault or rape. And most likely, this can occur in those who are single, divorced, widowed, or socially withdrawn, or of low socioeconomic levels. And the most important risk factors are for patients to have PTSD: severity, duration, proximity of exposure to the actual trauma. Although, of course, a factor there is also your resiliency, no? So, for example, in the study that I made many years ago among abused children, those who actually had good coping strategies did not manifest any signs and symptoms of PTSD. And among their coping or the condition is they have somebody to talk to. The second is in the Philippines is spirituality, no? So there is also increased risk of the disorder in persons with first-degree biological relatives with history of depression. So just like any mental health problems, there is usually an increased risk, no, of a disorder if there is a relative with mental health problem, no, especially among individuals with mood problems. Okay. And when you talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, the stressor, no, alone does not suffice to cause a disorder. You must consider the pre-existing biological, psychological factors and events that happen before and after the trauma. And we know that not everyone experiences a disorder after a traumatic event. Let's say the recent, no, in Cebu, we know that some, no, would have experienced PTSD and some did not. Okay? Or let's say the volcanic eruptions. No, some may have been traumatized or some may not be traumatized. Same with some of our patients when they are admitted in the hospital because of their condition or that they have multiple um, uh, experiences, no, related to either laboratory or operation or their condition, no, can be very traumatic for them. Okay. So what are the vulnerability factors? If you already have a previous trauma and then you add another trauma, that can be more difficult, no? And patients with these traits, no, borderline, paranoid, dependent, or antisocial personality traits can also be more prone, no, to PTSD. Inadequate family or peer support systems can also be some of the factors, no, that may contribute. Being female, of course, genetic vulnerability to the psychiatric illness. If you have recent stressful life events, perception of an external locus of control, no, rather than internal one, no. So of course, it depends on the perception of an individual. What may be traumatic for one may not be traumatic for another individual. And recent excessive alcohol intake is also one of the factors. No? In terms of psychodynamic themes, we see that the subjective meaning of the stressor can contribute, no, to PTSD, and traumatic events can resonate with childhood traumas, meaning that if you had a trauma before and then something similar or related to it is happening, it can be more traumatic for that individual. And if there is inability to regulate affect, no, this can result from trauma. When we say regulate affect, it's when they couldn't control their emotions, no, um, affect dysregulation, no. So that means they're always crying, they cannot control themselves, or that they're always angry, no. This can result, no, from trauma. And also somatization and alexithymia may be the after effects of trauma. So a lot of individuals with PTSD may present with somatic complaints. No? They complain about their bodies, daming sakit-sakit, and then that they feel that they couldn't feel anymore, no? Mga ganyan, no? And common defenses include denial, minimization, splitting, projective disavowal, dissociation, and guilt, no? So the dissociation is very common among abused individuals, no? When you ask them, did the abuse happen? They will say it didn't happen, no? But they actually experience it because they dissociate, no, from what happened, no. And some would minimize, no, split, meaning they will look at it as black and white, no. um and they project, no, there is projective disavowal, no. So in other words, they try to deny, no, that it ever happened. Okay. And the mode of object relatedness involves projection and introjection of roles like the omnipotent rescuer, abuser, and victim, no. So basically it involves um, they will try to check it, or they will try to introject. So sometimes this can also add to the PTSD, no, where you have some related signs and symptoms of depression, which you have in the DSM, no, criteria. So please review also the criteria, no, of PTSD. Okay? And when you talk about the cognitive behavioral factors, no, in relation to PTSD, usually there are two phases, no, the trauma and conditioned stimulus that produces a fear response, no, is paired through classical conditioning with a conditioned stimulus, no, like any sight, smell, or sound, no, that may trigger, no, the signs and symptoms, no. And then through instrumental learning, the conditioned stimuli elicit the fear response independent of the original unconditioned stimulus. So that means because over time you already are relating it to certain things. So even if uh, you don't have, no, the same stimulus, you may actually present with the signs and symptoms of trauma. Okay? And of course, you can have the biological factors. So what are the biological factors, no, that may contribute to PTSD? So the explanation here are the following. Of course, the more common one is the dysfunctional HPA axis, no, based on low plasma and urinary free cortisol concentrations in PTSD. Okay, and it can also be a hyperactive noradrenergic system based on the concentrations, no, in veterans with PTSD, or your hyperactive opioid system based on low plasma beta endorphins, and also lower average volume in the hippocampal brain region. Later, I will show some slides, no, about trauma, no? And of course, structural changes in the amygdala. So you remember in the limbic system, you have the amygdala. So when there is a stressor, it's usually the amygdala that sends the signal, no, to the rest of the limbic system. Okay? So just to review, no, your DSM-5 diagnostic criteria of PTSD, you know that these are some of the uh, criteria, no? Exposure to actual or threatened death, serious injury or sexual violence, one or more intrusion symptoms, persistent avoidance of stimuli associated with a traumatic event, negative alterations in cognition and mood associated with a traumatic event or events, no? And then marked alterations in arousal and reactivity associated with a traumatic event. At least 1 month duration of the following clinically significant distress in functioning. Condition is not attributable to the physiological effects of a substance or another medical condition. And of course, when we talk about PTSD, these are the differential diagnosis. This can also mimic seizure disorders, alcohol and other substance-related disorders, panic disorders, Jen's anxiety disorder, major depression, borderline personality disorder, dissociative disorders, and factitious disorders. That is why when you, in the preceptorship, when you have cases, you always consider PTSD because they're like your GAD, your depression, and your panic disorder also, no? Okay? And in some cases, when you have complex PTSD, you can also present with some psychotic features, no? Okay, so what would be the course and prognosis? So the symptom onset may occur 1 week up to 30 years, no, even after the trauma. I remember one grandmother who basically was traumatized in her early 20s. She actually was traumatized because she aborted, no? Even before she got married, she aborted, no, a child, no? And no one knew about it. And later on, she manifested with headaches. No, that was her manifestation. Somatic headaches and a lot of body pains. No, that was the manifestations. And then, so what happened was, um, she got married, no, afterwards. And then when she consulted the priest, a priest said that she will never be forgiven, no, for what she had done. So then the signs and symptoms appeared again, no, and it continued for so many years until she was already more than 60 years old, no. And so it wasn't really because she actually had a medical condition, no? It was because of the trauma of the abortion. And when she was told that she actually will not be forgiven for aborting her child, no? And so the whole time, all the workup, all the consultation, I think they consulted more than 10, no? Before they consulted me, and it was clearly, no, a manifestation of PTSD, no, that she was having all the somatic complaints. And when she learned about it, and then we did a trauma-informed CBT, she got well, no, all the symptoms were gone, no, and she was well, no, but without treatment, she was actually carrying all of these pains and manifested the somatic pains. So if untreated, 40% may have mild symptoms, 20% may have moderate symptoms, 10% may remain unchanged or become worse. No? There's another story about a student, no, who actually had problems with intimacy. So he couldn't understand why he had problems with intimacy. No, so it's either over or under. No, so um, in therapy, he learned that he was actually abused at 5 years old. No, so and the effects were that he had problems with intimacy later on. These were the effects of the trauma of being abused. No, this is a male being abused at 5 years old. And so when he realized it was that, it was not the other things. Of course, sometimes the patient had some other symptoms, but the core problem of it was that he was abused at 5 years old, no, and so I did EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, and later on, no, after several sessions, he got well, no. In addition to, of course, he had other trauma events, no, which we also processed. So again, no, as we've said, no, they may remain unchanged or become worse over the years. And the very young or the very old may be more susceptible. So this student was 5 years old, no, when he was abused. So, it is a lifelong. Then when he was already in college and later on, no, masteral studies, no, he was still manifesting, no, the signs and symptoms. And in terms of good prognosticating factors, if there is rapid onset of symptoms, short duration of symptoms, good premorbid functioning, and then strong social supports, absence of other psychiatric, medical, substance-related disorders, or other risk factors, no? So these are good prognosticating factors, okay? Now, the other acute PTSD, no, related to trauma-related disorders is your acute stress disorder. So you know that the SM-5 also talked about acute stress disorder when you have signs and symptoms less than a month, no? So the criteria is exposure to actual or threatened death, serious injury or sexual violence, 9 or more intrusion, dissociative, avoidance, and arousal symptoms, and negative mood. 3 days to a month, no, after trauma exposure, you have significant distress in functioning, and the condition is not attributable to the physiological effects of a substance or another medical condition. No? And some will talk about trauma or stressor related disorders, no, not it's the NOS, no, not otherwise specified, no. But again, no, you also again go back to your differentials. It can also be seizure disorder, alcohol, other related substance related disorders. So you try to do your drug assay, no, for seizures. Of course, you try to rule out with your ECG or your clinical manifestation. I mean, this one is EEG, no, not ECG, EEG. And then panic disorder, your thyroid function test, chest X-ray, your chest anxiety disorder, of course, here, lipid profile, liver, you can also test for your thyroid function test, major depression, your CBC. For borderline personality, you can actually request for psychological tests. Okay? Yeah. And we now go to treatment. So that's basically most of the things that you know already, just a review. And basically, treatment, pharmacotherapy. So you can give SSRIs like sertraline and paroxetine, your MAUI, but we don't have that, no? Monoamine oxidase, no? Inhibitors. Anticonvulsants like carbamazepine, valproate. Adrenergic drugs like clonidine, propranolol, no? Your beta blockers. Antipsychotics are only for short-term control of aggression and agitation if they have. So basically, the ones with evidence would be your SSRIs, like sertraline. For children, sertraline is approved for children and adults, no? And it has more in terms of evidence. Sertraline compared to the other SSRIs has more evidence, no? Um, when talking about PTSD, okay? And then you can also do individualized psychodynamic psychotherapy. Okay. So the general principle is, of course, support, education, and then developing of coping mechanisms and acceptance of the event. So you can have psychodynamic psychotherapy. You can also have trauma focus, no? CBT. Okay. So you can have behavior therapy, cognitive therapy, time limited psychotherapy to minimize dependence and chronicity, exposure therapy, stress management, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, where the principle here is when you do eye movement, you actually stimulate both sides of the brain. And so instead of just using one side of the brain when you're traumatized, you now use your both sides of the brain in order to process the trauma. So there is scientific, no, evidence, no, that it really works, no, when for example during disasters for children and for adults. For children, usually it's tapping, no, the equivalent of the eye movement if they're very young. Of course, for adolescents, you can do the eye movement, no. So it's like follow my fingers, no, as they think about what happened from a negative statement to a positive statement. Like, I will learn from the trauma, or that because of the trauma, I felt that I was not competent. So then it becomes I am competent, something like that, no? And you can also have group therapy and family therapy in order to treat your PTSD. And then you also have adjustment disorders, no? Under this, of course, you have women, no, diagnosed twice as often as men, 2 to 8% of the general population. And usually, single women are most at risk and can occur at any age, but most frequently diagnosed among adolescents because they do have problems, no, adjusting to changes in life. The common precipitating stressors, no, among adolescents are related to school problems, which we see nowadays, a lot of them, parental and of course, rejection from friends, no, and separation and substance-related disorders. And common precipitating stressors among adults are marital problems, divorce, or in the Philippines, equivalent is annulment, moving to a new environment, like for example, moving to a new house. More commonly in the Philippines, financial problems, no? And among the most common psychiatric disorders for patients hospitalized, no, we can also see a lot of patients having adjustment disorders. And so with certain professions, no, like our seafarers, they have difficulty because being a seafarer can really be very difficult, no? Ayan. And again, common wait, there. So now the etiology, psychodynamic factors, the nature of the stressor, conscious and unconscious meaning of the stressor, and of course, the individual's pre-existing vulnerability. So you also have to consider other things, no, like the role of the mother and the rearing environment and the individual's capacity to respond to stress. So one of the um, resiliency factors, no, when you have mental health problems is attachment. So growing up, if the child has very good attachment, usually they're more resilient, no? So that's why it's important to have connection with children. So when you, as future parents, no, and doctors, you should make sure, no, that there is connection between a child, no, and a parent, because it's very important for resiliency factors, no? Yung attachment, no? Kasi sometimes the children will get it from the grandmother, sometimes it's even the kasambahay, no? Then they are more resilient, no, compared to other children. Of course, there are other resiliency factors, no? The environment, nurturing, all of these are parts of resiliency factors. And the relation between the stressor and the human developmental cycle, no? Of course, it can also be related to family and genetic factors. So the DSM-5 diagnostic criteria for adjustment disorders, development of emotional or behavioral symptoms in response to an identifiable stressor occurring within 3 months of the onset of the stressor, and symptoms are clinically significant as evidenced by one or more of the following. So there is marked distress that is out of proportion to the severity or intensity of the stressor, significant impairment in functioning. Symptoms do not meet the criteria for another mental disorder and is not an exacerbation of a pre-existing mental disorder. And of course, if it is not no normal bereavement, so you rule out if it's part of bereavement. And once a stressor or its consequences have terminated, the symptoms do not persist for more than an additional 6 months, no? So only short term, okay? And you can add your specifiers, no? Adjustment with mixed anxiety, depressed mood, with disturbance in conduct, with mixed disturbance of emotions and conduct, and unspecified if the signs and symptoms are unclear, no, in relation to the adjustment. The course and prognosis with appropriate treatment, generally, if it's adjustment, it's favorable, and most return to previous levels of functioning within 3 months. No, so if it is already more than 6 months, then usually we consider other disorders. Okay, maybe it's not just adjustment, maybe it's depression or maybe PTSD. No, and usually adolescents, no, require longer time to recover than adults. And there is also increased risk for suicide. So it doesn't mean that if you have adjustment disorder or problems, you are not at risk for suicide. So your patients will still be at risk for suicide, especially nowadays where there's a lot of stressors. We always screen for suicide in using the CSSRS, no? Your Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale, okay? And treatment of choice would be individual or group therapy and also crisis intervention or your psychosocial processing, no? And of course, you can give your anxiolytics, antidepressants, or antipsychotics depending on the manifestations, but usually only for a brief period of time, no, until they are undergoing treatment or they're not well, no? It's more symptomatic. Okay, so that ends the first part of my lecture. I just like to add one, wait, for you, the trauma-informed care, no? I would just want to, okay, wait. So far, do you have any questions? While I check. So I will just show you, no? So it's easier for you to understand, no? Okay, this one. Wait, huh? So do you have any questions? I'd you like to wait, huh? Trauma-informed care because you have to practice trauma-informed care, no, in all of your patients, okay? Yeah. And just to show the brain, no? It's not going to be long. It's just for you to take a look at the brain, no? Long version. Wait, recent. Sige, so try to, take a deep breath. Okay. Sige, wait. Ayan. So, I will share this one. Wait. Do you see this one? Trauma-informed care?
Yes po, Doc.
Okay, sige. So, the trauma-informed care, I just show some slides, no? This is actually a training that we do for a lot of individuals, no? I've talked about this to the graduate school, to most social workers, to judges, to parole officers, students, no? Okay? Because it's important, I think, as future doctors to be trauma informed, no? And when you know about trauma, you are likely to talk to them, no? The way you talk to them would be better. Okay? Sige, so I have a few minutes. Okay, so this one, when we talk about trauma-informed care, this is the model, no? This is usually your patient. So you assess the trauma, no? And diagnose as either acute or PTSD, right? Or normal, no? And you use trauma-informed care, no? Universal precautions. And then you use trauma-informed systems so that they're going to have hope, healing, resiliency, and recovery, no? Okay, sige. So what are the foundations, no? So you already know the trauma, no? This is the definition, okay? Where they have adverse effects, no? When they experience an event or series of event or set of circumstances, okay? And of course, examples of trauma are all of these, no? Online sexual exploitation can be part of it. And there are the types, acute, chronic, even complex, no? Where the trauma can be caused by persons whom the survivor relied on for survival and safety. And according to Judy Herman, this is a book don that you can buy in the bookstore. It's if you talk about trauma, it's good reading, no? Trauma and recovery. Um, Judy Herman talked about being helpless, no? And usually the ones who are experiencing this, they feel that there's a threat to their lives, there's a disruption of control, and there is extreme helplessness, and there is somehow no a feeling of catastrophe that everything will be negative. Okay, so trauma shapes a survivor's basic beliefs about identity, worldview, and even spirituality. So these are the effects, no? And we know that exposure to violence in the first years of childhood deprives children of as much as 10% of their potential IQ. So you can already see, no? And we already talked about prevalence. Now, this one, you need to, you can actually search it, no? It's a study about adverse childhood experiences, no? And that this is a study done in Metro Manila among children, no? Adverse childhood experiences that if you have all of this, no, or some of this, no, it can actually result to signs and symptoms. So this one, no, is um, are the factors, no, that may affect an individual, no, from the household to the environment, no, to the community. All of this could actually be traumatic, no. So from bullying, domestic violence, emotional sexual abuse, to climate crisis, no, where you have a lot of disasters, the earthquakes, pandemic, and then to the community, no, discrimination, violence. Um, in the Philippines, no, yung corruption can be very traumatic, no, for a lot of people, no. You can already see lack of jobs, poverty, no, can be very traumatic. Okay, so there were the result of the ACE study showed that 75% of the men and women surveyed had at least one exposure. So that's very high, no, to an adverse childhood experience. And 9% had experienced, no, this is Philippine data, four or more types of abuse and dysfunctions in the home, okay? And most of the people surveyed reported having lived with an alcoholic or problem drinker and in a home with domestic violence. So the 75%, as you can see, the problem in the Philippines is really what? Related to substance use, not specifically alcohol. Okay? And there is a relationship between, excuse me, a number of adverse childhood experiences, health risk behaviors, and poor health. No? And poverty exacerbates it. So here, no, so that there's a connection between trauma and later on your patients having a lot of what problems. Early smoking and use of drugs were common among those physically maltreated. So if you see somebody smoking, maybe there is history of this, no, psychological abuse, sexual abuse, no, or physical abuse. So it can be one of the factors, no? And those who are psychological abuse and sexually abused more likely to have multiple sex partners, early pregnancy, and attempt suicide, no? So we can see a lot of individuals now with suicidal thoughts, no? So it can be, no, because of a history of abuse. And take note, no, the numbers 12 times more, 9 times more, and 5 times more, no, very high. It's not just one or two, okay? And here, no? You can see, no, the risk in terms of mental health. Okay? You can see, no, that's a summary. And here, I just want to show you that um, the relationship between adverse childhood experience and later on health, no, risk behaviors. So related, if you have adverse childhood experience, your risk, no, of smoking is higher. Okay, there, even with drugs, no, multiple partners, suicide attempt, no. So in your practice, I want you to ask, no, what happened to you instead of what is wrong with you. Okay? Yun lang. And then this one, so at least, no, you can see. So this one, you know this. Okay, so this one is what? The amygdala. So if there is trauma, usually the amygdala responds, right? And so it sends signals, no, to understand what is happening. So the hippocampus helps us understand, no, and provides the context to help us understand what the situation is. So it may say, okay, I am saying the fire is far away, so you can be calm, no? So, uh, well, you know this already, the amygdala and the hippocampus, no? Okay. So again, no, if there is a threat, the amygdala is activated, then the hormones, no, come out, and then your thinking is impaired, and then you're always on high alert. This is what happens when you have trauma, no? So the brain is very important, no? So this, no, will show the difference, no? So when you have patients who are not talking, usually when they are traumatized, no, this is when here, no, the Broca's area, no, uh, is functioning, okay. When there is trauma, the Broca's area here is not functioning. And you can see the difference in terms of the amygdala, no, that is affected, okay. So you can also see the ventricles, no, the difference here. So I'll just show the one that is maltreated, no. Uh, the left, no, is normal. The right, no, there is atrophy, and uh, the ventricles increase. So what I'm saying is the brain changes when there is trauma. Okay, so they compare the lateral ventricles measurement of a 11-year-old maltreated male with chronic PTSD compared with healthy non-maltreated match control. No, this is by Dr. De Bellis. Okay, yan. So this one is another look at how or what happens to your brain. No, okay, sige. So that's why you want to do psychotherapy, your psychopharmacology, so that the cortex, hippocampus can also improve, no? So you also need social workers because there's social environmental intervention, no, that is also needed when you have trauma. Okay, so that okay. So that ends, these are some ano lang, other programs, that could help individuals with trauma, no? So here, the EMDR, Reiki, the massage rhythm, diencephalon, music, even pets, no? Your canine interactions could help, okay, especially children. The limbic play and play therapies, performing in creative arts, and then storytelling, in terms of the cortex. So you just have to, ano, no? And this one is just to show you how it affects the brain. The rats, these are rats, they studied rats. Dr. Panksepp, who's a neuropsychiatrist, studied rats. And when they introduce trauma, like cat smell and cat fur, the rats, decrease their play. Okay, here. And then when you remove it, the play improve, but it is no longer the same. So your patients, when they are traumatized, even if you do therapy, they are not exactly the same, So that is the effect of trauma on the individual. That is why it's important to do therapy. Okay? Sige. Okay, anything else? I think that's it lang, no? Okay. Sige. Okay, so do you have any questions? Stop share na. Yan. Okay. Yan. So we have 6 minutes. Do you have any questions about trauma? So I hope you are going to be practicing trauma-informed care. You're informed about trauma and how you are going to respond. And also, it's important in the management, you educate your patients about what happens in the brain. For example, when parents are um, having problems with custody, I explain what happens to the brain of the child, or the individual, or them, what happens to their brain when they do that to each other. And so when they understand, what's happening biologically, they accept it more, and they try to agree, to the conditions. Parang suddenly they understood, they understand, what is happening to the brain. And so they cooperate more, So your patients, will cooperate more if you explain what happens to the brain and um, what are some of the treatment modalities, that can be done. So there are different therapies, and also specifically you have your trauma focused CBT, your EMDR, which are more popular, and also of course your psychosocial processing, when you still do not say that they have any disorder, so when you're out in the community you can process them, do psychosocial processing, or in the beginning you can do your psychological first aid, so that it doesn't escalate and become a disorder. Okay, so do you have any question? May question ba? Wait, check ko. Ayan. Meron ba? You have questions? I hope you understood the short about trauma-informed care, and then your disorders, and then how to manage. So basically, uh, sertraline, and then you can give some other medications according to the signs and symptoms of your patient. You can give antipsychotic, your beta blockers, your benzodiazepines, no, as needed. Okay? Sige. Oh, may 4 minutes pa tayo. Do you have any questions? So in the exam, please review the criteria. Okay, so I'll be asking few questions, maybe two, three, and then how to manage pharmacologically, and also how to manage in terms of psychodynamics, and also the uh, theories, no, why they have trauma, and probably just one or two about trauma informed care, and then what happens to the brain, no, and maybe one about adverse childhood experiences, no? Okay, but more about diagnosing, no, and other differential diagnosis of PTSD. Okay. May question pa ba before we end? So in summary, who wants to summarize? Meron bang gustong magsabi? Maybe a few of you can chat in the chat one sentence about what you learned today. Okay? Kahit ilan lang. So I know you are listening. Okay. Mm. Meron ba? What you learned today? In the chat box? Anybody? Anybody would like to write in the chat box what you learned this morning? Anybody? Wala yatang ano nakinig. Okay. Did you learn something today?
Doc.
What did you learn to this morning lang?
Doc,
Yes,
Doc, I think it's very important to know that people experiencing trauma and stress related disorders na it happens at any age and it depends on sa gender and it's usually on the male more on combat, especially on we can see
sabi.
it on more veterans especially, and for the female gender most common prevalent for sexual abuse, victims of sexual abuse. And yung in terms of treatment, parang it's really a combination of non-pharma and pharmacologic measures po. Kasi aside from providing prescriptions, we should also parang try to help the patient dissect the cause po of the traumatic episodes po. What triggers, what what aggravates po the traumatic episodes po. So it's a combination po talaga of pharma and non-pharmacologic measures. Parang we can really assure the patient na parang hindi magre-recur yung episodes. So, and it's also parang we extend our patience rin and understanding then to these patients who really experience the episodes. So it's
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Sige, thank you. So when we say trauma-informed care, meaning that when you see your patients in the beginning, be careful no, about talking about their trauma because when they talk about it, they might be re-traumatized. No? So make sure na they'll tell you only data that they could. No? Do not force just because you want to complete your history. It's more important to be trauma informed, that in the beginning you don't ask about all the details of the trauma, no, if the patient is still not prepared, no, to tell you. Okay, so that's very important, no. And as you've said, no, you have an eye view of the etiology and how it presents, no? And later on, in practice, the ones that do have, a lot of medical problems may be correlated also with, the ones with, there's a slide actually where the ones with a lot of medical conditions, no, cardiovascular, etc., can also be, associated with previous trauma, no, when they were young. So there's a relationship between trauma and later on having a lot of medical conditions, no? So that's one of the um, results, no, of the study also, no, which I just want you to understand, no, that there's a correlation between trauma and the other medical conditions, no, of your patients. Okay? Sige. So with that, I think we're already done, no? So good luck and thank you very much. Okay? Sige. Bye-bye.
Thank you po, Doc.
Doc.
Thank you po, Doc.
Thank you po.
Doc.
The recording has stopped.